Good afternoon. I'd like to call the August 31 special meeting of the Everett Public School Board of Directors to order. Director Mitchell?
Present.
Director Mason? She is here walking through the door.
Okay.
Director Lassane? Present. Director Herman?
Present.
Great, fantastic. We have all of us here. We shall now move to section 3.0, and our first item of business is the adoption of the agenda. Dr. Saltzman, would you introduce this afternoon's agenda?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, Board of Directors, to the public. This afternoon's agenda contains a work study session for directors to engage, understand how district leaders unpack data to inform supports for students. Also on the agenda this afternoon is a school year readiness update, where we will share with directors all the fantastic work we have done this summer to make our facilities and programs ready for the students as they enter on Wednesday. We are very excited for the meeting to begin and welcome back students to school. The final part of the agenda will be a closed session for the board to discuss bargaining.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saltzman. We shall now move to section 4.0, which is our work study session. And I see Dr. Scott is at the podium. Dr. Scott, is your agenda.
Thank you, President Lassane and Board of Directors this afternoon, and Dr. Saltzman. Really excited to showcase in this format here in this study session, which offers us a time to unpack and get our hands into the data, and most importantly, how perceptual data, our stakeholder perceptual data, is unpacked and used by leaders, in particular by teammates in MTSS teams, how it's unpacked and used, especially to inform supports for students in strategic investments. That is our purpose this afternoon. And in that way, we hope to engage you. You can see some tables in the back here that we're going to have you actually look at the analytical tools moving from analysis to action. And we would be remiss if we didn't talk about the crosswalk between the strategic plan initiatives and themes around how the role of perceptual data it plays out and connects to our strategic plan. Stakeholder data is all about students, staff, families, lived experiences in our schools, and how that complements the range of other performance data. You're going to be able to see that cross-referencing and the power of that cross-referencing today in connection to our strategic plan. In particular, what implications does it have to improving instructional practice? What implications does it have to providing equitable access to resources? The importance of community engagement and the role of systems and processes. And you're going to be able to actually practice some of those systems and processes that we apply to unpacking the data, moving from what does it mean, and more importantly, what are we doing with it, and how does it translate to action? So we're really excited to launch here this afternoon, and Dr. Matthews is going to come up and talk about some of the tools that we use.
Thank you.
So we have been working with Panorama Education since 2017, and the mission of Panorama Education is to radically improve education for every student by providing actionable data. They partner, as you can see, with 12 state agencies, 2,000 districts across the country, serving 15 million students. Their work is very much research-based. They have some of the most talented researchers, I think, working for them. And they focus on bringing the social emotional learning data into the data around student performance, achievement, attendance, discipline. So in effect, they're really focused on multi-tiered systems of support as well as positive behavioral interventions. We started with just the social emotional learning survey for students, we gave that twice a year, and then very shortly realized that their student success platform, which you're going to see today, was a really powerful tool for bringing lots of data together to better understand students and serve them better. And then following our shutdown for COVID, we also moved to their survey platform as the state required a cell survey as part of the annual survey for staff. So when we work with data, when we analyze data, some people call this my data disclaimer slide. I like to think of it as my data rules slide. And it's really a reminder that data in our system is pretty much infinite, in my opinion, but it's not infinitely useful. It needs to help us to understand what's happening. It needs to help us understand where the trends are. It needs to help us improve what we're doing, identify areas we should celebrate and expand. And when we are looking at data, it is critical that we remember our data, unlike many industries, represents children. Children that we work hard for every day, children who we love and their parents love. And so those numbers, really not numbers to us. The second thing is we need to remember that data will tell us what is, but it doesn't automatically tell us the why or the how. And that's where you really have to get in order to decide what actions that you take that are going to solve the right problem. And if we don't do that digging, we often approach, or we can approach things in the wrong way, solving the wrong problem. And then finally, data needs to be transparent. OSPI, as you know, has a wonderful website that gives our public lots of data. And we also provide data to our community. So we look at data. It can be tempting for us to look at two things. And I do love to calculate a correlation. But we can often make the wrong conclusion when two things are correlated. So for example, right here, we have master's degrees and box office ticket sales. And one might say that if you want to make a lot of money in the theater industry, you would just find a place that has a lot of master's degrees per capita and stick a theater down there. You might also say that if you have a lot of theaters, you could get lots of master's degrees, but these things are probably not at all really related in a meaningful way. Sometimes we let our biases intervene. This is the correlation between the number of letters in the winning Scripps National Spelling Bee contest and the number of people killed by venomous spiders. So I might have a theory, for example, that says, you know, people in spelling bees, they study a lot, they're not watching where they're going, they might not even notice a venomous spider on them. And so I might say that these things are really related, not just mathematically correlated, but the truth is probably not, unless a lot of Scripps spelling bee contestants are dying from venomous spider bites. And then there are some things that look really logical and feel really true right off the bat. This is the relationship between SAT, math, and verbal scores and retention in college, and it's a fact. Students with higher scores tend to retain through their second year more often. But is the SAT the reason? Probably not. There are probably intervening variables that make a really big difference. For example, perhaps you get a better score if you can afford a private tutor in the SAT. And if you can afford a private tutor, there's a chance that your parents might be footing the bill for college, so you don't have to have a job on the side or worry about money. There are all kinds of intervening variables. It's not directly get a good SAT score, stay in school for 2 years, right? There's lots of things that happen in life. So one of the things that we use, and you're going to hear more about, is the ladder of inference, and it's really important we don't race right up it. Whether we are talking about perceptual data or quantitative data, taking the steps one by one makes all the difference in getting from that what the data says to the how or the why. It can guide our action in a meaningful way so that we can make improvements in student learning and improve schools. So I'm going to give you an example here from data that you've seen before. So last year, 500 students took 527 world language assessments in 30 languages and earned 500 high school credits. So that's a piece of data that we observe. And when I look at that data, I might start to formulate some questions and select a little deeper dive into the data, and that's important. What I select is important. So for example, 35% of world language assessment takers are multilingual learners. That's true. So that would be 175 of those 500 students. And I might even think, oh, it's pretty good. Or I might think, boy, that is really low. But I need to look at the context. I need to add meaning with maybe some more data. So for example, I might realize, only 11% of students who are enrolled in our schools are multilingual learners. So 35% of test takers are multilingual learners, 11% of our enrolled population. So do we need to increase it? Or is this really a good number? Is this right exactly where we should be? Should we be celebrating? Also, not every student who's multilingual was served in 2023 because some of them tested out of the program, but they're still multilingual learners and they may have qualified to get credits through this exam. We might have missed them, right? So from there, I might make some assumptions. So first, the assumption I might make is all multilingual learners are fluent in reading, writing, speaking, and listening, which they have to be to get credits. I also might assume that everybody knows about the test and the benefits of the test and that they want to take the test, all right? And when I think about those things, then I might draw a conclusion. And one of those conclusions might be, we're not reaching every eligible person, and we should be. We need to cast a wider net. And if I come to that conclusion, then I'm going to start to formulate beliefs that'll actually influence what data I look at and the conclusions I make about that data, right? So for example, one of the things that I might conclude is we need to find out more. We need to know exactly why multilingual learners didn't take this test. Because if 11% of a population of 9,000 students, 6 grades, that's, 1,200 kids, right? But we had 175. I might wonder why that is, right? But I need to dig deeper and I need to get more information. And so the action that process will guide me to is that I need to have some outreach to parents and kids. I need to find out what they are because we want to solve the right problem. And when I have that information, then I can start to put action steps in place to cast that wider net. Because we might be in a place where we're exactly where we need to be. We have captured all students, or we might not have caught everyone. So racing up that ladder, we might miss some important steps that can help to guide our work and improve our skills.
Can I ask a question back there? Yes. Is that ladder done in ISO, because even with that, I could see how you could get some confirmational bias because you're just answering, you keep going deeper and deeper versus having somebody that says, yeah, but. So does that ladder allow for the yeah butters, or will you get
Absolutely, because I think
so,
when you're analyzing data, especially in the school improvement planning process, which you're going to hear more about, that involves your staff, it involves your leadership team, and you will hear all of those different voices. Also, remember, we're in perpetual motion. So we might go up this, we might survey our families and come put something in place, and then we're going to monitor it. And if it's not working, we're going back down the ladder to collect more data and to dig more deeply into the problem.
Thank you.
So even when you draw conclusions, you have your staff will able around you to tell you, but those conclusions aren't sound.
Which is why we need to be a data-driven organization, right? And that's what our schools are, very much looking at the data, not just our gut feelings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the ladder of inference is only one of the analytical tools that we utilize. And you might be familiar with the phrase clarity, candor, context, and candor, which we've used fairly frequently. But we also use that as an analytical tool to really kind of think about some of the data. So this piece of data here that we'd like to share is actually from the district survey, and it's specific to professional learning. And when we use that clarity, context, and candor frame, I can see that in clarity, 45% of our respondents in this question, specifically around professional learning opportunities, as delivered by central office staff, was relevant to the professional work. 45% of our staff responded favorably in this, either strongly agree or agree, and we can say that's very clear, right? But if we think about that somewhat agree category, right, that kind of that mid-range there, we can think, wow, if we actually targeted, if we dug deep into that data and targeted that, we might actually be able to flip that from 45% to 82%. And so there's a land of opportunity for us in thinking about how we can dig into that data. But what we need to also do is we need to provide some context. Well, who were those respondents? What did that say? And so when we actually take a look at the percentage breakdown of the respondents, we can actually say, wow, well, you know, I see right here certificated central office staff and certificated central office administrator had really high response, really very favorable response rates there. However, there are two categories on here with classified central office staff and professional technical central office staff that were relatively low in comparison. So as we drill down deeper and think about the context around that, like what might actually be the reason for such low scores? Maybe they just didn't attend, right? We got to not race up that ladder, and we need to start thinking about the context. And so when we think about the context, for example, professional technical employees here at the central office, that is a very a specific set of people that with very specific set of roles. You have professional technical classified employees in finance, and you have prof tech employees in academics. And their jobs are very specialized and very different. So the opportunities for a centralized professional learning opportunity for them may be very challenging. And maybe rather than a centralized PD, they may actually have a more localized to their specific assignment. And that may be a result of this data. So we think about how we can narrow the focus and thinking about the clarity of we still need to address those people. We still need to address that professional learning need. What would that look like? And how can we get further candor of how do we increase our favorable responses in this area? With this next set of data, this is a sample of our family survey, specifically around barriers to engagement. We're very focused on engagement with our family and community, and these questions really revolved around how big of a problem are the following issues for becoming involved with your child's current school. And the answer response ranged from, it's a really significant big problem, to it's not a problem at all. And in this set of data, you can see that overall the results were relatively high in a few categories there. For example, questions 1 and 2, thinking about how does the school communicate with people from your culture, as well as concerns about going to school safely. And we can actually think about some of the actions that we had that may have influenced that data. So things around language link or providing documents in home languages for their families. Maybe we're doing those bus routes that are communicated well in advance so that families know where those bus routes are coming from. Those may have been factors in there. And 90 to 93% of those said, hey, this is not a problem at all, or it's a very small problem. Now on that third prompt, you see there's 46% responded favorably, and they said, hey, only 46% said my busy schedule is a pretty small problem or not a problem at all. And we know that our families are really busy, and that may be something that's really difficult for us to control. I can't control what somebody's work schedule might be like outside of the school system. But what we can do is dig deep into that data and start thinking about what are some actions we might take to maybe mitigate that concern. Could we provide multiple opportunities for parent-teacher conferences? Could we provide opportunities for Zoom meetings for a conference rather than asking people to come in person? And can we offer multiple opportunities for people to either come to a school site that's in their resident area or also maybe to a school site for a Let's Connect meeting that's closer to their work? So those are some of the things that we think about when we start to peel back the data, is not only are we looking at what our data is, but also starting to climb that ladder and say, what more information do we need, and how can we help to take the appropriate actions to provide a more favorable experience for our families. This is a piece of data from our student climate survey. This is an elementary data set, so it's only grades 3 through 5. And in this data set, you can see that overall, students in grades 3 through 5, their engagement was down a little bit by 4% in comparison to the previous spring data. So you can see the previous 2 springs, we were at 63%, and that this year it was 59%. So when we look at those individual questions asked, you can see each of those questions had a lower response of favorable responses from the previous spring. But we know that engagement is an area that we've been intentionally elevating through work in schools. And this is a data set that school teams will need to dig deeply into. The first one I would look at is that bottom one there, where around when you're not in school, how often do you talk about ideas from class? That's a great opportunity for teams to really dig into that data. What does that mean? How often do we build bridges from what we do in the classroom to the relevancy outside of the classroom? So this is an area where teams, again, could unpack that data and help start thinking about what actions need to be taken to help improve engagement opportunities for our students in schools. So this is an example of our student social emotional learning survey, and this is, again, elementary. And when you look at this data set, this is just a graphic image of our sense of belonging data. And we continue to use that clarity, context, and candor protocol. And in this example, I might think about what's the clarity here? Well, the clarity is 69% of our students responded favorably around sense of belonging in school. But the context might be, in comparison to other spring data, it's relatively commensurate. You can see that in spring of 22, it was at 68. In 21, it was about 72. So it's not moving up. It's kind of staying flat. However, we need to think about what else we could be doing to help include that sense of belonging. And there may be some good context there. We do a lot of sense of belonging and social emotional learning at the beginning of the year in fall. Classroom circles, you're gonna see it all in the next week, where kids are connecting with each other, they're connecting with their school, they're connecting with their teachers. That's a really big push. So one question schools might ask is, do we just do that in the fall? Do we revisit that throughout the spring? How do we maintain some of those specific actions to help students develop that sense of belonging within their school? And the candor around this is 69% is not too far off from where we've been in the past, but it still means 31% of our students are not responding favorably to this question. And that's going to cause us to drill deep. And the Panorama tool allows us to drill into, where are those students? Is it a particular subgroup of students? Is it boys? Is it students who are in a special program? Is it a student group that's an ethnic group? What could we be doing to help create a better sense of belonging? And unpacking that data in a really intentional way helps school teams to really dive deep. This is another data analysis tool that we utilize, and it's a little bit more of a cycle where we think about those same pieces of, first, we think about what are the identified data that we really want to dig into, and then drill down into that data. So in this case, we might unpack what student subgroups had the least favorable sense of belonging responses, and why did they respond that way? Was it a specific grade level? What could we be doing to intentionally find more data to help us clarify what we need to do? Then we start looking at identifying adult practices that will actually make a difference in moving that data forward. So how do we get adults to engage in practices that will actually improve our student responses and student experience in the school? The case we might explore in this case might be what teachers use to create a classroom environment that was really conducive to a good sense of belonging. Maybe this classroom did a really great job of using ruler. How can we replicate that in other classrooms? How can we learn from those teachers? And how can teachers teach their peers as well? So once we've narrowed down that data to a more specific group, and we can do some really intentional planning around what are those targeted professional learnings that we need to do. So in this case, you may have teachers who say, yeah, I'm super comfortable with the mood meter and ruler. I can leave that at a staff meeting or a professional development for the staff. And thinking about those actions that are actually going to help improve student achievement, student sense of belonging, as well as cultivate an environment where teachers are learning with their staff as well. So we're actually going to transition, and we're going to have you engage in an activity where you're digging into some of our data. Dr. Matthews, Dr. Meisner, Mr. Fleckenstein, and Dr. Woods, gets me every time, sorry, Larry. And they're actually going to partner with you, and they actually have all three of these data analysis tools, and they're going to partner with you in diving deep into data, asking some good questions, not allowing you to race up the ladder of inference, and really thinking about how we use these data pieces to improve student achievement in our system. So without further ado, I'm going to ask these staff to find their board director and walk through the tools with you. And Dr. Scott, how much time? 10 minutes, perfect.
You get credit.
Come on, I need a pencil.
So just contextualizing right now on our they're really here to center yeah, so yesterday and today was and then what they'll be formulating in September is what are the practices that change, and they'll say and then they will then develop. So, and then this second one, so the IR on the ladder of inference, I just kind of want to compartmentalize what we do. So the first rungs of the ladder are it is, and then it shows. The middle of the ladder is really about making the sense of, and then bringing in other information. Not a reliable so it's not like they want to say so very now our we always want to make sure exactly. So we have to go through a process in our once we figure out what the data is, we spend our staff professionals and then finally just taking action is the traditional thing that I look plan actions and then that because students are coming back. They have Or are we doing more? Yeah, we don't know. But overall, I'll say there's yeah, exactly. It's overall she showed us there just but you're right. That's great. There's having a spring repairs that they're still really strong. Now we get a breakdown for like students. That's exactly. So you're talking about say one day. And one of the things we'll see in the next presentation section. So the other thing where the issue is like what it is. One of the things that we did at the end of the year. Yeah, yeah. So there's so they average many hymns. So that was something that was focused on our professional development. Because that's so without further ado, I just want to kind of make some connections between a lot of the terms that we use because for board members we are here throughout the year, but kind of fit in with the rest. So the process we use when picking up going into these kind of things, you would but there's data, this is their dashboard that shows us their plan of improvement. You can see how it is relative to the national increase. And how we break it down by it might be a new data set that we haven't used. Coming down here, I'm just going to pick this one. Big deal. But when we actually look at what's measured, so it takes a bit of time. It does. But we see that trend over time in school for just this particular data. And so then it starts to break it down by compare by district. And then you can actually break the school down by this is where the really starts to hone in about which are working in another area, which are not. And then that will formulate the around. So I'm just picking one of these. So students yeah, so it's not a big discrepancy. But looking at ML, so this basically the gender slight difference for male but then breaking it down by grade level, third grade is much more positive. So perception around perception. Oh, and there you go, I can't be right. But then race is a big one too, because when we're really doing something about in our physical lives, although there's it's on the so here you can see it right. Exactly. That's what they were saying too. Similar to our just next to so that way it's so this can really hone in. We always got to get to let's say we want to make it so where it goes from data to action is the adults really start to Yeah. Great question. Great question. I'm not gonna download them myself, but I can actually download them just the and one of the reasons we're in the deep of it right now is we're using a demo site because that's how we get the nitty-gritty of who you guys are. So absolutely, it could just be a lunch break small group and not a building or so here it actually gets you into this would be, I think, what everybody would all the way because the different ones that you want to have that now when you think about that so that's why successful data and then especially from a first graders. Actually, panorama does that more. The second presentation, we're looking at that. So intermonthly and PSS. So first one, imagine that it's from that. And from that, you're like, we are going to so at the end of each one of them, they actually have a that we can do this. Now this would add to it. So you can see how we can and you can see there's here, this will take you into the deep database, but these are like the top. So with that, and this is just one item, is there any, I mean, you're more than welcome to pick it up from school, you know, but this is you won't get it. Say that this is
So I'm curious.
what is it there?
Can I ask you to take about a minute to wrap up a final thought or a noticing, please? Just another minute or so? Okay, we're going to transition to part 2. If you could finish that last thought, please. You can stay, if you feel comfortable, you can stay right where you are. I'm sorry, I know that this was really, really rich conversation. You'll have opportunity to do it again. Really appreciate this sort of part 1. We're at halftime of the interactive parts here. We're going to move to part 2. And hopefully this, by design, this exercise here, what's an illustration of how a principal might unpack their data with their instructional leadership team to inform their school improvement planning initiatives. or a grade level team. So you're walking through that. But what is the power of cross-referencing certain risk factors? We're going to dive into the Panorama Student Success Platform next. You're probably familiar with the Student Success Platform. It's a big part of the suite of tools that we partner with Panorama for. In particular, you can see some of the data displays. These are obviously static data displays. Part of the reason why you're in small groups is that you're going to be able to dive in a demo account or the sandbox in a minute to really dig deep and follow the train of thought or inquiry, that curiosity that drives how leaders, how teams of folks, by way of curiosity, by way of motivation or sense of urgency in closing those achievement and opportunity gaps, looks at how stakeholders perceived or how they are actually experiencing school in real time or as close to real time as possible. So you've got coursework, attendance, behavior, and SEL there. Those are all interactive displays. There are a ton of is that a word, Catherine? Disaggregatable? Could I add a couple syllables onto that? You're able to disaggregate in a lot of ways. Okay, all sorts of different indicators. If you wanted to isolate by coursework, all sorts of different indicators around social emotional learning. So we can pull out some really interesting things. Obviously, teams look at this to unpack or to group students by any of those indicators to motivate and propel different interventions that are both group related and certainly individual, tailored to individual needs. Some of the most powerful features here makes visible what was previously invisible. And I'll give you an example real quick before we dive in. This is a student, this is a middle school student who has all A's in 1B, doing very, very well in school. Hasn't missed but 2 days this year, 0 behavior. So previous to being able to pull out some social emotional learning indicators, we would have just green flagged or said, just keep going, right? You're doing great. We now have, and this is, state level testing, level 4 across the board longitudinally. We now have indicators to say, how is that student experiencing school? What if they're disaffected by school? What if they don't like coming? What if they don't have a trusted adult? What if their emotional regulation is not where it could be? We're able to isolate those variables and say, this is a real student. Of course, names are blocked out. This particular student struggles with emotional regulation, and this is something we can do something about. With a student who otherwise had a really, really strong and successful profile, this is something that we can do. So it's surgical, it's specific, and that's the power of this tool. Of course, again, it's used for kids who are struggling among multiple, most often used by teams for students who are struggling in multiple indicators. But you can see the power of this tool to pull out kids who might otherwise, have a whole lot of interventions in their day.
Resources are so limited, and we tend to, as you mentioned, look at those students who are struggling, those students who need greater involvement with whatever resources are available. How do we ensure that those kids who were doing very well, we don't just say, keep going, and we drill down and we look at it. Are we really looking at them? There are several kids you hear about in other districts, not ours, who are doing so well, yet those are the kids who are challenged kids as far as 1 or 2 days they'll come out and do something off the chart. And, parents say, well, how come the kid, the school didn't say anything? How did I know? How could I have known? Right,
Great point. And these are flags, right? This doesn't tell us exactly how to intervene. It's not a mental health tool. It's certainly a screener for us to get on that ladder of inference and ask questions and unpack the data that lead toward a more tailored set of interventions for students, or that stronger family connection where we can link them with resources. This allows us to see kids in 360 degrees. And I want you to have enough ample time to get into this tool now to see how we can drill down with that as well. And then we'll come back at the end here with a whole group discussion.
So this is all done. This is.
If y'all could wrap up your last thought there, we'll take about another minute for Student Success Platform, just another minute. Yeah, when you're finished, we'll come on back, because the board's going to have a whole group discussion here. Okay. As in the classroom, we like to say thank your partner. And come on back to the table. All right, thank you. Thank you for engaging in both of those segments there. We wanted to open it up for the next bit of time before we transition to our part 2 this afternoon, to this prompt here, and anywhere you want to take that prompt with your board discussion. What did you notice, experience, or wonder about how these processes inform school and department improvement actions for leaders and staff? What did you notice or wonder, or questions you might have?
Who wants to jump in? I obviously we've heard about and seen presentations on Panorama before, but I don't think I really truly appreciate the depth of the data that it can be captured with us. And so part of walking away from this is just the ability that our school staff has on really digging down to a lot of data points on individuals and groups, on what's working, what's not working, and data over time on SEL in particular. So this was really, really helpful in just seeing what we have available to us. One of the things we talked about with Dr. Matthews and I, the interesting, and obviously we as a board, we're looking at district-wide, but also the power in taking these data sets at the school level, and as was discussed before, coming up with individual school level plans, grade level plans, and then looking at what's working, what's not working. Because what we don't see in variability, we could have one school or one grade level that's knocking it out of the park and another one that has fallen behind. And on average, we're seeing that sort of as a net zero. But I think that's where this just has so much power for the school improvement plans. So those are just some thoughts.
I had a couple thoughts. First off, I mentioned it to Kathy, but maybe it's for a Brian question. What is there a positive role for AI in this? I mean, we're looking at 20,000 kids, and yes, we have counselors, yes, we have principals, but your kid that you put up there that is, you'd say like, hey, great job, Peter, you're doing great, and nobody knows that you're suicidal, because it's like there's so many data points. That is there a positive role for AI that while the staff would be doing the interventions, while the staff needs to know this, to Pam's point about we have done some strategic and maybe some very surgical cuts here, is there a role for AI to sort of help make some of these reports, instead of, because I saw a lot of hunting and gathering, or maybe it was Kathy was being very, very purposefully slow with me.
That's a really great question. I think there's probably room for exploring the role of AI. I think that the engine that runs Student Success Platform and the amount of touch points that we have with the engineers that have helped, we've been in partnership with them since they were a fledgling organization, and they've been very responsive to asks around data displays and software. So the idea of making more intuitive the flagging and the grouping based on any number of those variables or combination is something that the tool can do. Where it falls short, it's something to explore.
And I know that's future talk, and I'm not AI terrifies me, so I'm not saying that as a component. My next question, because I had a wonder, thank you, Kathy, so much. But one of my questions, and I think this is important for the community that might be watching this to know, that she did clarify that if an intervention is done, like we were talking about a student, we picked a student that has a math problem, that they go to tier 2 support, which is tier 1 and tier 2. So being clear there, it's not a replacement. And I appreciate that verbiage that she used, but that the parent is included and given progress notes, because I sort of asked about accountability. And so it is how the teacher, the coach, the counselors, the principals, whoever is doing those things, but the parent is kept updated too when the interventions are done. And I think that's important for the community to know that the students are getting extra support plus support, and the parent is kept in the loop. And I think hopefully that gives some confidence to parents that, you know, if maybe nobody's reaching out, maybe everything is good, you know, but if somebody reaches out, that means that we need your help too. So I like that.
I did ask the question of Pete before, when he showed me the types of information that it would include. If we found a need to interject the parents in there, where we brought the parents then in and we relayed what was going on at school, so they could then, I guess you would say, work with the student and the teacher at school to emphasize certain things at home, so that there would be a connection between what is done at home and what is done at the school level, so that the supports are equal.
Okay.
And he mentioned that, yes, they would bring in the parents or the parents and whatever, guardians in, so that they can get the same kind of briefing. And I thought that was very good. You know, I thought that was worthwhile, because sometimes the parents may not have the ability or the resources to assist the student in the same way as the school has, but they would like to know, so that if they could then, you know, help the student out at home, re-emphasize what's being taught at school. That's the best way to go. And you mentioned, yes, that would be done. My question is, and we mentioned this once before, it's not another project on top of all the other projects teachers have. It is an integration of what we do, and it isn't another layer of requirements on the teacher. How, my wondering is, do teachers and assistant principals and principals realize this? And they accept it as this is part of their responsibility and not additional requirements on them?
That's a really good question. First of all, behind data is what? What, Catherine? What is behind data? Children, always behind data. What you went through today is what we do with our teachers and principals, or our principals are doing with their teachers. Certainly not a thing as educators. We have to diagnose what the issues are, right? So you do it like this kind of activity, right? Nobody wakes up out of their first class and say, can't wait to go do data, like, right? You want to teach. So you got to remember that, because that's what happens. And so you're educating your principals and assistant principals and teachers together, because you've got to know how Ian's doing in your class, right? And this is an hour tool. And really what data is, and Catherine says it many times, but we could all say it together, is the we, is that we look at data to help us get better. And behind the data is a child. So a great example, what you saw today was a child with amazing grades, but might have an attendance issue, which could lead to other things. So as our teachers are teaching, the best model of a PLC is what? You sit in a group and you break down the needs of the children. That's how the system gets better. And as you see through the years, are slowly, we're easing into data to be a tool. You know, we're having those discussions. What we try to do today for our public to know this is that you experienced the same training that our teachers principals and cabinet does. We break it down, we go over it, and we're prescriptive, right? If you go to a doctor, you know, for heart, and you go to a knee doctor, no, orthopedic's not a heart surgeon, right? We got to be prescriptive in education too, and that's what we're doing. So it has to be part of the work, not an extra work, but it is when you sit down, you masterfully work with that as a principal and assistant principal and your teachers. You see many grade levels talking about this. You see many counselors discussing this. I won't say it's a lot of work. I will say this publicly. It's the right work because behind the data are the kids, and it's just, you ease into it and you become consumers of data. You do activities like this with faculty and they engage in, wow, little Ian, he's missing something. What can we do? So really good question. Really good question.
Well, I liked Kellen, I don't want to take your time, but I liked the kid that we picked, the fake kid, so that nobody thinks we were looking at real students, that we were given a little sandbox to play in. But it was a kid that had Fs in grades, but was dark green and everything else. So great attendance, great SEL, great behavior, zero behavior problems. So we looked at his problem really was math, and Kathy said, you know, if this math continues to go down, that SEL is going to go down, that behavior could go up. And so the intervention, sort of how do we do tier 2 as quickly as possible, because where everything else looks good, it's not going to stay good. I mean, it's probably not going to stay good. And because he's probably faking it until he can't make it anymore. So it's just sort of interesting. I like being able to see that, and I like the grades, so they're not having to go out to grade. It looks like they don't have to go out to grade book. They don't have to go out to attendance. It brings it all in, which I think is that, I mean, when you look at, to me, that's better.
Yeah.
Very powerful.
Okay, I think it's time to transition for the second half. We were thinking about maybe just a stretch break between the two.
That sounds like a perfect idea. Let's take a stretch break of no more than 3 minutes.
3 minutes. I can do 3 minutes.
One for it.
Hey.
Who to watch? Okay, let's see. It's 3 minutes.
And it was hot and sunny.
It was nice. We shall be called back to order, and we will be looking at the second round, and Dr. Scott is at the podium.
Great. Thank you, President Lassane, Board, and Dr. Salzman. Really appreciate the opportunity. This one's going to be different. So we're transitioning to this, that was sort of halftime. There is no halftime in baseball. You're gonna see some baseball metaphors here, and there's some good. There will be a seventh inning stretch. There will be a pitching change. Promise you that. So those are some of the intervals for your feedback. But we are super excited to thread through a metaphor that we hope sticks, because it's stuck for us this summer around the big we, right? How do we collectively come together to move student achievement forward with proficiency and growth? And the idea of playing off of that metaphor for opening day is incredibly important. We hope to do that today for you, and we're incredibly excited to illustrate opening day readiness across all of these different departments. You might say that's a lot of departments. So we are going for breadth today because we want to communicate and illustrate to the board, to the community, that we are ready for opening day. And we want to demonstrate that in multiple forms and fashions there. And then we'll open it up for discussion and questions interspersed. Again, kind of writing, so forgive us for the metaphor if by then we want to move off of baseball. We'll just do some discussions and questions as well. So I'm going to launch here and talk about where we were on July 31st briefly. So this was our Summer Leadership Institute. Let me back up and say, actually, so that I want to mention too, that while we're going for breadth this evening, September 12th is a big day. So this is a little public service announcement or a little plug here for September 12th, which is a regular board meeting, where we're going to dive deeper on summer programs, summer update and readiness, and so be looking out for that design that takes some of those components and brings it to life. So that's September 12th. On July 31st through August 2 was our Summer Leadership Institute at Jackson High School. And you can see that we, again, grounded our work in the strategic plan. Those were the through lines there. So this is with all of our administrators and supervisors. So like in baseball, it takes preparation, it takes conditioning, months of planning to get to the place where we are revisiting our goals in an annual cycle, a cycle of consistent and continuous improvement. And that notion that, and we've seen through lines already this very week when staff came back, that the notion of all roads lead back to student achievement is alive and well in 27 of our buildings, as well as the operational groups that support, that they find it their mission to support student achievement is incredibly important. So that's the through line that we hope you see tonight, and I'm going to toss the ball here, and you want to, okay. We didn't practice that part. Good job, Larry. You didn't drop the ball. That's
never played baseball, so that's great. Well, so one of the things that Dr. Scott had mentioned in the previous presentation was systems and processes, and Dr. Matthews mentioned data. And what links the two of those things successfully together is people. And so we embarked upon a 3-day continuous improvement professional development for our school administrators starting on June 28th. And the focus that we had on June 28th was how to maximize the human resource to move in one direction through learning about distributed leadership practices. And the outcome of this particular portion of the continuous improvement professional development was the strengthening between instructional leadership teams at each building and how they, as a team, just like a baseball team, are working together to strengthen the data review practices and collaboration within Learning Improvement Fridays in response to the actions they plan to data in their school improvement plans. So using those people and building up our leaders' capacities to build up their leadership teams.
Nice.
All right. There you go. No, not one hand. Advance the slide. Okay, so the second part in the three-part series, this was August 2nd, was our time to work with our school leaders to equip them to use data effectively with this network of distributed leadership teams, right? We made a big focus, though, on the instructional leadership team, specifically around school improvement. And a couple of things that we highlighted, we're using essential questions with our leaders. We really work with them to move from sharing data to inform, to designing and facilitating a team for collaborative inquiry to use data for decision-making. It's very different. It involves things like we experience with using like the ladder of inference, a common language for analysis, so that the team is working together effectively and efficiently to make decisions for improvement. So some of the essential questions you can see up there are, what is the story of overall achievement across the school, a grade, or department? What is the story of achievement for our multilingual learners and our students with disabilities? And then they had a lot of time with each other, and they got into several of the different data tools that we have, that we're so fortunate to have in Everett, to dig in so that they could figure out how to collect the data, organize it, visualize it, and then be prepared to facilitate it for improvement.
All right. The third in our series of 3 leadership improvement sessions took place on August 9th with all of our principals and assistant principals. And they took what they had developed on those previous 2 days. So they brought their instructional leadership team retreat agendas, and they brought their annual calendars for professional learning throughout the year, and they brought them and shared them with one another. And they got feedback from one another so that they use those collaborative structures that we've developed with them to learn from one another. In fact, we said, we want you to share those with someone outside your region, outside your level. So if you're an elementary school in Region 1, go share it with a high school principal in Region 3 and learn from one another. So we really they came away with actual plans for that ILT retreat and for their annual calendar of professional learning throughout the year, as well as then moving towards the LID days that they just engaged in for these last 2 days. So they also received, they were equipped with information about equitable instructional practices, budget, supervision and evaluation, discipline. We had a great time going through some discipline scenarios and learning, and then the social emotional learning tools, especially Ruler and Second Step. So they were really equipped when they left after those 3 days to really move forward to the LID days, these last 2 days, and then into professional continuous improvement through the professional learning communities in their schools throughout the year. So we saw it these last 2 days. We saw staff leading staff in professional development, in developing norms for professional learning communities. And one assistant principal that I heard this morning said it best. He said, it's game time and we are ready.
So our new hire orientation was last week, and it spanned August 22 through 25. And you can see that we welcomed in 54 new certificated instructional staff. And one of the things that we want to make concrete here is those through lines. You're going to see at the expense of looking redundant, that's by design. So the topics that have been established and reestablished or reinforced in those leadership development sessions are vertically aligned to down through training sessions so that new staff understand where our core priorities are, our strategic initiatives, the why as the engine behind our work, particularly emphasizing the elevation of equitable instructional practices and student voice, PBIS and SEL processes and values there. And then those sessions were differentiated based on grade level and content area. And most of them had a specific underlying core of gap closing instructional strategies, particularly around students with disabilities and multi-language learners, which is, again, those points of emphasis that we want to make sure that are threaded through our work. EPS Learn, so Everett Public Schools Learns was our professional development set of courses. They were self-selected options. We were proud to be able to offer 109 options taught by folks in our district. So tapping into local expertise around a whole host of topics, again, relevant topics that you see show up here again by design. Academic content areas, so folks were able to find job-specific connections with the curriculum, with high leverage instructional strategies, college and career readiness, CTE connections, safety and security connections. So we're really proud of the learning opportunities there, which also included a Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Day on Friday the 25th, which rounded out that EPS Learns week. Paraeducator professional learning was, it seems like a while ago, but that was just 2 days ago. About 500 paraeducators in a set of courses that were designed to target specific pieces of their work that are high leverage, high impact pieces there. So you see effective teaming practices. How am I effectively teaming with a teacher that I support, or in the cafeteria, or whatever my role is. Child development, SEL ruler and PBIS shows up again. Why? Because it's so fundamental to removing barriers for high quality instruction to take place and for kids to learn. We know that that is a prerequisite, you bet. And then leveraging instructional technology. How do I navigate not just the basics or the 101 type courses, but how do I leverage the technology like flat panels and things to engage kids to make learning come to life? So this is a perfect time for, perfect time to pause. This is a pitching change, pause and reflect.
Well, I was gonna, on the last slide, I was gonna ask a question.
Yeah.
So you have, what is that, the 23rd, 4th, and 5th, 3 days of professional learning there. Were teachers or certificated staff required to go to all 3 days? And how do you, I mean, it was self-selected in terms of areas of interest, but then what if they,
So I apologize. I should have explained that a little bit better. So the new teachers had the entire week from Tuesday to Friday.
Yeah.
They had very, let's say, prescribed courses or sessions that first day on how to navigate Everett Public Schools. They were then afforded and I would say it was softly prescribed those other days. It was, these were courses that they needed to take to be, a third grade teacher. So I'm learning about our curriculum in ELA and math. The self-selected options, I should have qualified that better, were for other, what was brand new for this year is that we wanted to merge and capitalize on the opportunity for all these sort of homegrown experts here to be able to lead sessions for any certificated or classified current employee, not new, but current employee, to merge in and learn alongside. So that's what happened, to the tune of about 200 plus certificated and classified folks that did end up, they were the ones to self-select those options there.
so 200 out of 1,200?
About 1,400, yeah. And these were for clock hours, yeah.
I might just also add that throughout August, we also have professional development specifically for example, we've had some middle school redesign and some new courses. And for those new courses, we've had some very specific special professional development for those teachers that have been invited. Sometimes, because it is August, they don't necessarily have the opportunity to come in. And so we have repeated opportunities for staff who didn't get some of the training in the summer so that they feel equipped to teach some of those newer classes or content that they're not very familiar with. For example, we're really excited. We have 4 brand new art teachers and in different levels. And I just authorized to have those 4 teachers who are new to that content, pull them together so we can do some collaborative planning with our art facilitator to do that work. So there are other opportunities kind of in a more select and very specific way to meet the needs of teachers who don't necessarily they need additional training because they have new courses or they needed something different.
So just to follow up on that, so the teachers that they're mostly the ones in need of clock hours, so technically you could be a certificated staff person and not attend any of the professional development. You could, and even if you didn't need clock hours, you could still do that, but it sounds like that wasn't looking at the numbers, that wasn't the case.
And I can just explain a little bit. What we did is we put together some courses that we thought were really relevant. So for example, a course around 3-5 word study, or there was a course on how do you utilize the iReady tool in a way that's more meaningful, or digging deep into that data, or how do you just use some assessment and grading practices that are really healthy, great practices that we want people to have. And we had, teachers who self-selected and said, I wanted to learn more about this. So they got clock hours. Maybe they didn't do it because they needed the clock hours. Maybe they did it because they wanted to enhance their learning so that they could start the year in a better way. So we did have some of those offerings, and
Right.
we had quite a few. Like, for example, I know that we had several ruler trainings. I think that was one of those that was repeated. Full class in that section, I think all 3 sections.
You might have mentioned this too, but typically the 200 plus self-selected is probably above average of what we would have expected in the summer for clock hours, as opposed to if we have a large-scale curriculum adoption. This is Shelley's wheelhouse, in the sense of that is a paid training if it directly affects your initial implementation of that curriculum. That's when folks come outside of their contracted days to receive that. And so we did have job-specific, self-selected. And I think you also probably touched on this too. This is a forebearer of the local school-based professional learning that happens as designed and delivered by school staff, by the instructional leadership team, by principals, as well as facilitators who are either CRC based or the coaches and facilitators who work in the building. So this is just the tip of the spear for summertime to launch into the school year, and to be agile enough to be able to respond to what principals say their teachers need, and principals to have. We sign a lot of clock hours for this, yesterday and today for the lid day. Those are 9 hours of professional learning grounded in that school improvement plan. So this is just an added catalog of opportunities for teachers to self-select into, in addition to the new folks who get a more prescribed experience, because we know what they need to be successful on day one, and we try to get that to them.
Yes. There's
I
another
guess
question over here.
this is maybe more of a Chad question, but in healthcare and now my business, and so I wonder about teachers or the staff, district staff. Is there annual training that state requires, OSHA requires, L&I requires, anybody requires that is annual that everybody has to do? Sort of, fire safety or first, that part of this summer, it's like, because my company does this, every hospital does it, it's like by this date, everybody has to be trained.
Yes, we call it vector training. It's all online, and it is specific to their job type. So each job type has a certain set of required trainings. It gets pushed out in August, and they have to complete it by October 31st.
Okay. And it depends on the job, but some of it.
Yes.
And so like HIV and all that kind of stuff. Just
First aid, that's
Yeah.
outside of that, but
Yeah.
vector training is the package that gets pushed out for everybody.
Okay, thank you.
Even, I'll chime in there, volunteers are required, the vector training. You have to go through a video with tests at the end on sexual harassment or that sort of thing in order to be improved.
Since I was a volunteer.
I didn't have to do that.
I did over the summer, and I got the email on it, but
Good to know.
I was, a quick question on that last piece for summer. I'm guessing that feedback surveys are regularly done, what was helpful, what not, so that next year tweak, make sure the PD is what you want to see.
Yeah, yes, we do evaluations after courses. And I also think that there's in the works a plan for us to kind of do what we call an after action review with EPS learns of what did we expect, what went well, what do we need to do differently to meet the needs of people in the future. This is the first time we've done this in a while, and actually we're really pleased. We got good feedback from the teachers who participated, and we're looking forward to reviewing some of the evaluations and thinking about how we can do it better next year too. Okay. Well, continuing with our theme of baseball, just like every good ball club needs the right equipment for that game day, our staff need to make sure they have access to the materials and resources that they need to start on the very first day of school. So we've ensured that our consumable curricular materials, including our art materials, student workbooks, manipulatives, science resources, they are ordered and delivered to every building. Our online licenses, of which we've really increased a lot of those, for every student ordered, and the support, that's the support and access the curriculum as well. And then we've done a lot of partnership with the Learning Info Technology Systems, or the LITS team, in ensuring that those Canvas pages are up, ready to roll, and both students and staff access those, and that's a really great communication tool. But those are updated and ready to roll for our students when they roll in on the first day.
Do we still, or are we still going to have a technology individual at most of the comprehensive high schools at least, and the middle schools, and at least shared between the elementary schools for this upcoming year?
Yes, so each comprehensive high school has an on-site tech support person. We have an on-site Chromebook support person at each middle school, and then the elementaries share tech support amongst them.
Okay.
One person for 2 or 3 elementaries.
And we have a 24-hour or at least help desk or something like that, or thereabouts, not 24 hours,
Yeah.
But, the kids can probably run that easily,
Yeah. Well, the 24 hours would be the use of Let's Talk, where people can ask questions and the chatbot can try to help them that way as best they can.
Okay. Thank you.
Have we seen a decline in our consumable materials with the increase of use of computers and technology?
We actually have, and in fact, there are opportunities for us, so for example, the Springboard Pre-AP materials that we use at the high school is a fairly hefty consumable workbook. We'd get a pretty good deal on those workbooks, but we actually did some surveying of staff and saying who would like consumables and the digital access, and who would just like the digital access. And so that's allowed us to be a little bit more fiscally conservative about, rather than just ordering books, saying, hey, let's be really smart about this. In addition to that, our staff did a really nice job earlier in the spring of identifying what consumables haven't been used in what buildings, and if we have extra consumables in one comprehensive high school, then we can actually shift them and use those for the next year. So it's given us the latitude of being able to be just a little bit sharper and smarter so that we're able to use our money in a more intentional way.
Are we moving towards all digital platform?
We have seen a significant increase in people just using online digital platform. There are some students and some teachers who really prefer those consumable workbooks across a lot of different content areas. AP Environmental Science, which was just a recent adoption, we purchased both textbooks and digital licenses. We also know, though, that we probably will not need to replace those textbooks as much because they utilize the digital access. So they last longer, and that's our hope. But we have seen an increase in online licenses and a decrease in the consumables and textbooks. Our assessment and research team has done active work around provisioning that performance matters. I think they did over 1,800 test cleanups so that we have our assessment tools ready to roll. They've also done a lot of assessment training in a lot of state, district, and national assessments. That some of them start right at the beginning of the year. The WIDA, which is the multilingual learner screener, that starts from day one, and so we wanted to make sure our teams are prepped and ready. They have done an amazing job of updating user permissions, so when staff change from school to school or change grade levels, someone has to actually go through and make sure that all of that data is accurate so that they can see their students in the iReady system or in performance matters, make sure those pieces are cleaned up. They've been actively vetting the 2023 Smarter Balanced Assessment and Washington Comprehensive Assessment of Science data, and making sure that we've got those pieces cleaned up for OSPI to do their release. And just getting ready, iReady site materials for fall administration, because that window opens relatively soon in the beginning of the year as well. We also have been hitting the ground running with CTE and choice programs, and we actually did some additional training with our elementary and first Lego League training on August 18th. Updated robotics components with our middle schools and did a training for some of those. We've seen an increase over the last few years in participation in CTE courses in the middle school, and of course with the middle school redesign, we have some new courses that we're really excited, that students are really excited about, and really trying to ensure that vertical alignment between those middle school exploratory courses leading into the CTE preparatory courses in the high school. And then with college and career readiness, a great ball player always needs to have good practice and training, and we were really excited to have over 100 participants in this year's Everett Public Schools Advanced Placement Seminar Institute. It was an online institute from August 14th through the 17th with really content-rich professional development for both new and experienced AP teachers. We had, like I said, over 100 attendees, and these are teachers from in-district, teachers from across the country, and in fact, actually, we had some international participants this year, and you can see the plethora of content that we offered through that institute to help make sure that we are ready for our students on day one for those pieces. And then, of course, I like to think about baseball. This is a little preseason with our Everett Ready. So this is a transition program that's really designed to support all enrolled kindergarten students. So every kindergartner in our system has access to Everett Ready. It also included students who participate in special education developmental kindergarten programs. They were also included in this opportunity. And it was a chance for them to meet school staff, make connections with peers. It's really a lot about how do we do school when that school is empty and void with everybody except for our incoming kinders. And there's an opportunity for them to become familiar with the campus, learn those classroom routines, and we actually do a parent meeting as well on that first day. Principals take the opportunity to meet with parents, talk a little bit about pick up and drop off. Kindergarten parents, if they're new to our system or new to kindergarten, often they're a little bit nervous, sometimes a little teary when they're dropping their students off on that first day. And this opportunity just gives us the experience, the chance to really work with those families and let them know what they're doing. But it takes a great load to get ready for this Everett Ready program. We met with building admin, we met with the teams at every building on August 17th to ensure that the office staff knew what they were going to be doing, that the principal was ready, that the staff, the paras, and the teacher were ready and knew what to do as far as attendance and how to run the programs. And we really often think about Everett Ready as just like a kindergarten program, but honestly, this is a great example of great partnership within our system. Facilities help to develop plans so that the schools with construction projects were ready to go so those kinders would have a safe place to come in and learn. Food service provided over 4,000 healthy snacks in that 4-day event. Human resources supported the hiring of over 180 staff members. That's certificated paraeducators, health room assistants or HRAs. Special services provided inclusive opportunities for all of our students, which is really important for us. That's a core value that we have here, and we're really excited that our partners helped us to do that. And on top of it, transportation provided buses and routes for all eligible students, which we could not be successful with the Everett Ready program without providing that transportation. We have approximately 1,476 kindergartners enrolled in our district this year to start on the 11th of September. Of that, almost 1,100 students participated in Everett Ready. So it is a significant amount of our kids who will be coming to school ready to go. That family engagement meeting is a critical component of it, and we had those inclusive rooms at Madison, Monroe, and Silver Lake Elementaries. So we are ready for kindergarten.
All right. So on Tuesday, August 8th, we had our second annual classified job fair. Based on the feedback we received, we did a little bit of changes. And what we did is from 1 to 3 offered application support. What we noticed was everyone was coming in at 3 and they were spending the bulk of their time trying to get their applications done. So we had support in there from 1 to 3, helping everyone make sure they were ready. They had complete applications. And then from 3 to 7, we had building administrators, department administrators, in all the rooms down here interviewing and filling all of their positions. If any of the administrators were done, they were in calling references for the principals or administrators trying to fill positions. We beat all of our numbers from last year. We had 126 candidates here on site, 43 job offers, and 38 candidates signed up to be a substitute. From last school year to this school year, we had over 120 certificated staff either resign or retire. And as Dr. Scott said, we had 54 at the new hire orientation. These numbers changed all week. They were pretty low at the beginning of the week, but we have hired all classroom teachers and we're ready to go. Happy to say that was done before our Learning Improvement Day, and they, of course, will be all ready for the first day of school.
I didn't even practice that. So I'm going to continue with the baseball theme. If you build it, they will come. Has to do with pursuing your dreams, and that if you build something that people need or want, even if they don't know it, they will come. You won't have to bring it to them. They will come to you. So in the maintenance and facilities areas, we've had this dream of having every work order completed and every carpet cleaned and every restroom ready to go. We think we're going to be there, believe it or not. Maybe not with every work order done, but the buildings will be completely ready for the start of school. We being myself and the directors of maintenance and facilities, have been meeting weekly with the deputy superintendent and the regional superintendents to update them on the status of our schools in various areas. So these are some of the topics of the things that we go over with that group weekly during the month of August. This covers primarily the custodial and grounds areas. So we cover each of these for each of our schools. And this is a heat map that shows in colors. Green is ready to go. Orange or yellow is underway, and red means we're not quite there yet. So you can see that this is an interval of a week between the two. So this was about a week ago, and then this one was last week. So you can see the difference, a lot less red. I wouldn't want to show you what it looked like a month ago because it was not pretty. But please don't feel like you need to read these. I just wanted to give you a visual representation of what that looked like. So this is another way to look at the same information. This one covers a lot of the building trades. And so again, our maintenance folks prepare these charts, and there are actually 4 pages now to this. It covers each of our regions in the various building trade areas. And so what we do is we cover the status of the work in those building trades in each region with that group of people. And then this is the capital facilities update. So what we do is our director of facilities and planning prepares a weekly update on all of our projects. And again, I won't ask you to read through these, but those kind of a summary of the projects over there on the left. And so the superintendent's cabinet level staff are updated weekly on the status of all the projects in maintenance and facilities. And I will toss it to Brian.
I do want to thank you on replacing all worn out US and Washington state flags.
And also, I like weeds to a minimum so that it's not a guarantee, like no weeds. Just, then I appreciate the honesty.
Well, to be ready for opening day, we also need to make sure our students have access and to the technology, our network's ready for them. So that's a big focus, which really starts the day after school's out. Our team and our summer team kicks into gear. Again, I'll take this opportunity to thank our community for approving the levies that give us the funds to provide these for our community and for our students and for our families. For our elementary students, our crew went through and touched every elementary Chromebook. That's 11,000 roughly. Those live in carts, so they made sure they were wired, clean, ready to go. They also prepared Chromebooks at the middle school. I put that in two different because the middle school Chromebooks at Heatherwood, Eisenhower, and Evergreen are new this year. That's part of the levy plan for life cycle management. Gateway and North, this will be the last year those students have them. They will get new ones next year. So our crew touched all of those computers. Our high school students, roughly about 6,000, those are PCs. This is the second or third year of their use. Those are ready to go. So the bottom line, that's a lot of computers. The students will have the access to their computers, and they will have their computers for them during checkout. In fact, Eisenhower already checked theirs out, and so did Gateway. They did that as part of their back to school nights. So we also have the panels. We checked each of the 1,200 panels. We made sure that everything was still working on the safety checks and disinfected with all the touching that took place throughout the year. And our internet access, so much of our network is on Wi-Fi. And so there's two things we wanted to make sure. Students had access, so we have hotspots ready to go as we've had in the past, 2,000 hotspots ready to go. But we also upgraded all of the access points. So the access points are the ways and the places that students can access the internet. There's about 22,000 of those, so we upgraded those up over the summer as well. You heard Dr. Boughton mention about the curricular tools. Roughly, there's about 85 now district-supported digital tools that we configure and roster and get ready for opening day. And the day after school got out, we hosted a 2-day technology summit, and we had about 150 staff that spent 2 days with us on making sure what are some engagement strategies they could do. Some wanted to go to tier 2 and tier 3 training on the interactive panels, learn more about Canvas and engagement strategies using technology. We spent time with them. We just wrapped up today our second day of LID with our teachers at all of our high schools and all of our elementaries. That was very exciting to learn along with them about how students can more fully engage with the panels and project their computers to the panel and mirror back and forth. Very, very exciting. And there was some nervousness there too, but also spent some time refreshing SAMR with them. But really, really positive, high energy out there with our schools. And then we spent time this summer in August onboarding our new staff with our office professionals, paraeducators, Everett Learns, new hire orientation, lots of technology. Kind of heard that through line that Dr. Scott mentioned, and getting ready for the start of the year. Are you ready? Good catch.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about what food and nutrition did in the off season. And one of the things they do for the year is they actually prepare the menus for the entire year, which is pretty amazing. And part of that, they're looking at, they do a harvest program of the month. And so ultimately they feature a different produce each month, one to give kids access to seeing different foods, as well as an educational component to that. So they look at providing kale and Brussels sprouts and broccoli each month, and that's really neat and informing to the kiddos and giving them that opportunity, the students are giving them that opportunity. In addition, all the food will be delivered tomorrow so they're ready to begin preparing the meals for them next week as well. Some of the programs we're continuing on for next year is we are still doing the community eligibility provision program, which provides universal free meals to about 2/3 of our schools, so 12 elementaries, 3 middle schools, and 3 of our high schools. And in addition, we get a grant from the Washington State Department of Agriculture, which helps us buy produce from Washington vendors, as well as produce from vendors who own farms from people of color and who are indigenous peoples as well. Another program that we are continuing on as well is serving our 18 to 21-year-old students, and this allows them to provide hand-on learning and training experiences in our food and nutrition departments. They get an opportunity to interview with the food and nutrition team, as well as do the dishes, help prepare food, and all different opportunities around that. And something we started last year and we're continuing to grow is our plant-based menu. So in Tambark Creek, we tested about 6 different menus last year, and we're implementing 2 of those across the districts as well. So we're going to continue using Tambark Creek as our testing place and start continuing growing some of those menus as well.
She didn't trust me there. Okay, we want to take a breath here, 7th inning stretch to pause and reflect before our final innings here. We're just about done. Anything you'd like to comment on or any questions?
I did have a question for Chad, Dr. Gordon. We had 120 new hires, certificated staff, which surprised me a little bit, only because we were so worried about reductions.
That was the resignations, retirements, it's those that left.
Oh, I mean, sorry, yeah. So we were so concerned that we wouldn't, meet the goal of the financial goal, and yet we far exceeded it.
That's correct.
Is that a typical number for?
It was much higher than normal. It was higher than normal. And I think part of it was the incentive that we had done in January to encourage any of the certificated staff that we needed to have contracts with to notify us early enough to make those decisions.
And what do you attribute that higher number to, other than, I mean, clearly they were going to do it, that what you spoke to was the timing of it.
I do think some people made decisions to go a little earlier based on that incentive. It was 40, probably around 40 higher than our normal number. So it was a good chunk. I think they also felt that they were contributing as we were going through that reduction phase.
Yeah, I was curious if the COVID years had any impact on.
It could have
people leaving the
contributed, yeah.
profession,
Yeah.
If you've seen that across the region and nationally.
There has been, I wouldn't say that's widespread, but.
And just to tack onto that, because we do exit interviews or exit
Correct,
surveys,
yes,
right? So
yes.
there are going to be some data there.
It's part of the resignation retirement process.
To learn,
Yep.
Yeah.
I just had a question regarding the use of computers. When we talked about 6,000 high school PC devices, were those ones that were returned to their original student, or did we have a large number that we had to replace as a result of damage or anything to that effect?
We didn't have too many to replace for damage. Those were able to be repaired. There are some that go missing, so we do have a number that we need to replace. But the repairs, we don't lose too many to repair. There are some students that keep them over the summer, so we assume they're going to bring them back at the beginning of school, and then the rest are refurbished and reimaged and ready for
Right.
checkout.
And those that are missing, so to speak, they're not part of the ones that kids kept over the summer.
Correct.
And they're going to bring back.
Right.
We can still identify where they're located,
Yes, we
right?
can. Yes, we can.
And we're going to
we-
take those actions to
Right.
get them back.
And we continue to do that. Yep.
Okay.
I guess I have more of a statement than a question. It's a question for us. I think that pre-pandemic, this school readiness meeting, I don't recall one, but I remember asking for one after the pandemic, like after we were coming back to school. And I personally really do appreciate this really high level summary, especially in this open public meeting where we can, especially with our reductions, with the fact that some of the press that's out there about public schools, that we are a highly functional district and we are ready for these kids to come back. And I know there's still more to go, but I just really appreciate every department really emphasizing that we know what we're doing here and we continue to get better and to learn. So that's just more of a statement, but I do appreciate this meeting that we've started since the pandemic.
I had one more question. I don't know if this is part of maintenance, but since we had the new new employee indoctrination or orientation over at Evergreen, we had asked the city for a traffic stop across from the new development there at Four Corners. And I didn't notice any kind of flashing crosswalk signs. Is that still going to take place, Mike?
You know, I'll have to look into that. This is actually the first that I've heard of the idea of putting a light in. Are you talking about to Evergreen Middle School? Because that's right across the street.
Not a crosswalk, not a light, but it was supposed to be like one of those people crossing lights.
It's where they lead into the street. They're trying to work on it. It's where they lead in to the street from the apartments.
Okay, I'll have to look into that.
They're literally.
Sorry, I don't have an update.
Yeah, we're still working on it. There, as they enter or leave the apartment, there's walking crosswalks just to check on that.
Yeah, I was under the impression that the city was going to put in a crosswalk there, a lighted crosswalk, i.e. a flashing lighted crosswalk, just to protect the students that will not go to the light to cross, but will take the easy route across the street.
Right.
There's already a crosswalk there.
There's a crosswalk there,
Right.
but it isn't lighted.
And there's
It
no
isn't-
families in those buildings yet.
Not as yet.
Not yet.
Not as yet, but they are
There's still time.
quickly finishing
Yeah.
that development. And so that was my concern at the
And
start of the school year.
So as I said, I will check into that and find out what the status is.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. So we're in the home stretch here. We are rolling for transportation. You can see our superintendent in one of our new 3 electric buses here.
Whoa.
Some really cool charging stations. I think maybe in the back there, you can kind of see it. Really excited about that. You can see the benchmarks there, which we have met to date. And we know how important it is to both establish and maintain trust with our parents in particular, who send their greatest resource, their greatest loves on to and from school, and the expectations and the responsibility around that we take seriously. So we have met all of those benchmarks, and we are ready for the first day of school. The notifications have gone out. We have troubleshooting mechanisms for when things happen, which we don't have either control over or that we anticipate are frequent adjustments that need to be made, and those systems and processes are in place and in good working order for the start of school. Did you want to? All right.
So this is what we call batting cleanup. I am the last one here. We also did a lot of training with staff this year, both staff who needed reminders, but also new staff on how to work the engagement tools that we have here. So Let's Talk, we had quite a few new people we had to train on that one. Social media platforms, website management, how to make edits on your website, and also branding. So when they do communicate with their families, everything is branded. And these were some individual, but also some large group trainings that we facilitated. Mm-hmm. And then the last piece is just about the chatbot. So as a reminder, there's 2 pieces to this. A lot of people get confused about this. The bottom one right here, contact our team, that's when you send a message that goes to an actual person. The top piece, when you ask a question, that's our AI piece that is available 24/7, as Brian said. When people have questions they can ask. And the whole goal of that ask a question is so people can get their question answered any time of day, because we're not in our office 24/7, although sometimes it feels like we are not. And it also hopefully reduces some of those repetitive calls to the offices. So we went in this summer and we tried to figure out what we thought the most asked questions would be, put in what those answers are. And I just looked a little while ago. The top 5 questions we've had so far are, where do I get my schedule? Where is my bus stop? How do I change my contact information? What time does school start? And what school supplies do I need? So those are all questions that they wait and call the office managers for, that now they can get answered just by typing
Wait, so
in.
these are your guesses, and then those are the ones, the most common ones asked?
Yeah,
So you lined up pretty
we did pretty good,
excellently.
didn't we?
Yeah.
Yes, we did.
It's like you're a parent or something.
You'd think that, right?
Go figure.
So it seems to be working pretty well that people can get these questions answered. And then just as a summary, hopefully you feel like for everything you've heard tonight, that we really are ready for the school to start, and we are going to play a quick video for you to emphasize that.
Yes, yes.
We are ready for you. We are ready for you. We are ready for you. Estamos listos para ustedes. We are ready. We are ready for you. We are ready for you. We are ready for you.
No,
We are ready
right.
for you. We are ready 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 for you. Estamos listos para usted.
Very nice.
You and Jen were busy.
Yes.
So the end is just that we have a 2 moments now.
The last slide was really just to open it up for any final comments or questions or wonderings that you might
Director,
have.
do you have any questions?
I had a question, Kathy, for you. Oh. Can you explain the Let's Talk engagement, the training on that?
Yeah, so the piece where the emails go through, they go to different departments. So if you're asking a question about academics, then there's about 5 people within academics that are trained on how to answer the questions through the system, because it doesn't just come into your email, it comes into the Let's Talk program.
Okay, I'm getting confused because we were talking about those community engagements as Let's Talk.
Those are Let's Connect.
Oh, Let's Connect, okay.
I
Thank
know.
you.
They're-
And
Sorry.
Let's Talk is the chat bot, but it's a human person.
Yes.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yep. Anybody else?
I'll just chime in to duplicate what Director Mitchell had said. Fantastic presentation and comprehensive with all the different areas.
Yeah.
And so I think it is especially important for the public to sort of see all these different areas that have been worked on. It's not just start of school, let's start school. All of this is very intentional. And so I think someone should say it. I think you all hit it out of the park. It was just, but well done. I'm extremely excited about this year. So.
I would say so too. I'm extremely excited about this year. This is great. Director Mitchell, do you have any more questions?
I think I said mine earlier, but thank you so much.
Yes, okay. Any other? Dr. Solson, do you have any follow-up?
Just want to say thank you. I will tell you that we will be ready. I can assure the public that the team has worked very hard. The cabinet, the principals, the entire staff, teachers have come back the past few days, but we worked all summer to be ready. We have a motto that the first day is the best way to set the tone, and the last day of commencement is the way to celebrate the year. So I will assure the public that This will be the best opening, and we're well prepared, so thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Saltzman and your team did an outstanding job. I think we got a lot of positive feedback, and everybody is excited, and I feel excited too. So nothing more needs to be said. I will now, no, we will not adjourn. We will, well, wait a minute. There's a script. Sorry about that. Immediately following the regular board meeting, this special meeting, the board will hold a closed session to discuss bargaining. This now brings us to the item of 6.01, which is the adjournment. This meeting is now adjourned. Thank you all for the presentation. It's wonderful. Thank you.